vote, and she can't get them to vote because they don't know how. And she gets the booklet and she reads everything. So I felt that's great. That's pretty good. So let's see, we have 19 participants. And you guys are all credentialing who's voting and who's not voting.
Yes,
good.
I am. Who's
okay,
Krista? Krista is just no last name.
Krista. Oh, she does have a last name.
No, there's one.
I just saw it go flying.
And there's Krista. Is that one and the same?
Oh, she's a guest. Krista, do you want to
what is your last name?
I don't see her. I'm looking for her.
Yeah, I think Rosamond, there's a Krista Ross that has voice only and a Krista that has video only.
So which one?
I'm asking Krista Ross to unmute to maybe confirm she's one and the same Krista. Person. Yeah.
She's a different, is she the same or she's different? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, that's what we're asking her.
Yeah, this is pretty common. Sometimes people can get their computer, audios work, so they just call in for the phone for the audios. So
right.
It's
exactly
pretty much like probably they're the same person. So
okay. Yeah. So it's Krista Ross. Okay, good. Okay. Both are
Sounds
I do the same thing, Krista. I do the same thing. Sometimes audio. Sometimes I have my phone. I'm using my phone for audio, and my laptop do the same exact thing. So, okay. We have any other? Hi, Tori. Hi. Let's see who else we have here. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, I haven't been here. I've been busy. I've been missing a couple of the meetings, but I'm excited to be here.
Good. We're happy to see you here.
Thank you.
Let's see who else. Let's see. Oh, Ellen's here. Who is 83271173440? Is that Danny? Hi, Danny. Okay. All right. No, that's not. Hi, 83271173440. Could you just give us a name so we can rename you? Please? No? Okay. Let's see. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Susan.
Okay. Hi. Okay. It's 6:30. Okay. So I'm going to start the meeting. And I want to welcome everyone. I want to welcome all of our new members and all of our renewing members. And for the officers that are here for the Democratic Women's Club, I just want to remind everybody that's a singular women's club of San Diego County. I'm Susan Peinado. I'm the president, and I don't think we have Ramla Saeed on right now. She's our VP. Our Brenda, Dr. Fielding Miller will be joining us later. Kathy Hyatt is on here, but Kathy is waylaid. She has COVID. So we're all gonna wish Kathy the best and a speedy recovery. And our treasurer, Rosamond Blevins, is here.
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. So Rosamond is here, and she's the most important officer we have. So I want to go right in since we have our Our director, our District 20 director is here, Michelle Krug. Michelle, you want to say hi? She's with the state. I don't see Michelle. I think she kind of maybe dropped off. I'm trying to look to see who else. Brenda Aguirre you're an officer in another club, and it's are you the president of one of the clubs, Brenda?
I am vice president of the Latina Democratic Club. I am vice president of the Progressive South area, and I am a member at large of Blue Dream Democrats.
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. And let me see, and Ellen Nash is here. Ellen is the chair of San Diego BayPAC. I'm trying to look to see who else we have. And if I miss somebody, let me know. If I miss any officers or any other people, we're honored to have. Steve Padilla is actually going to be, he's on the agenda, John, thank you.
Well, Elise Pipkin-Allen is here. I'm the vice chair of BayPAC.
Oh, Elise, where are you?
See,
oh,
I'm right here.
You are 832-711-734. Are you, I have a phone number, I think, for you. Say something.
Elise Pipkin-Allen.
Oh, now you've just, okay, somebody just named you again, We were trying to ask who that was.
Oh, I didn't recognize that number.
Well, that's the number you're calling in from.
What?
So, yeah. Okay,
That is
so
crazy.
So right now we have Steve Padilla, and Steve Padilla is the Chula Vista District 3 council member. I would like to give Steve about 5 minutes to talk to us. Steve, take it away. It's all yours.
Hey, Susan, thanks everybody. It's great to see you and see a few others, and I'm really grateful that you gave me just a few minutes. Really, my intent was to circle back. It's been many months. As we head into the final couple of weeks, I know that so many of you are so active and working and advocating on so many fronts. So thank you for all the work you do and all the educating you do and membership building that you do as a club, and also your engagement for all of the progressive and democratic candidates that were working hard to get elected this November, which is an understatement to say is the most important, I think, election in our lifetime. But it's been many, many months since I was able to, last time, appear in front of you in person. And I wanted to circle back before the election for a couple of minutes and just say thank you again for your encouragement and your support. When I particularly, not just in this election as I seek re-election to the council here in Chula Vista, but to many of you who reached out during the time this past spring when I was very, very ill with COVID and was hospitalized on a ventilator for a period of time. And many of those good wishes and karma and thoughts and prayers were very much felt. And I wanted to thank all of you for that. And just tell you that many of your members are obviously from the South County area and are aware, but like many other communities, we're working hard to advocate with the county and the state, particularly, and even with respect to some federal assistance about equitable distribution of resources, about communicating past cultural and language barriers, to really educate our constituents here how to access services, particularly as it relates to their own relief as renters or residents, certainly if they're small business owners, how to stay operating if they can, but most important of all, getting the correct information out to people about how to access good care, how to get tested, because South County, interestingly, maybe some of you don't know, while the county as a whole has maintained our status without slipping into the worst category of having to shut down, if you separate out a lot of South County's numbers and certainly Chula Vista's numbers, we actually are in the worst category. Our rates of transmission, our rates of infection and hospitalization are above that of the county average. And so we have unique challenges here that we're hard at work on with many, many partners in and out of government, NGOs, and even in the private sector to get that information out. And obviously you don't need me to tell you, it doesn't help when the people in our national leadership are saying not just just all the wrong things, but inappropriate things. And that translates into people's health and lives. So we're hard at work. Wanted to let you know that. I just wanted to say hello briefly because it had been many months, and I wanted to thank you again for your support and all the work that you do. And hopefully the day will come again soon when we can be together in person. And I hope that you're all well and healthy and safe. And thank you again.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Our club does have a lot of very involved members. And I'm glad that you're doing better. Our secretary right now has COVID. So we're hoping she has a good, strong recovery too. Yes. But so other than that, are you have any lingering symptoms or things that you want to?
You know, I have to tell you, knock on wood, I'm one of the lucky ones. You know, all the cardio kind of stuff looks really good so far. The pulmonary lung stuff, look, you know, I had some scarring from the pneumonia, but they don't think that it's going to create a permanent, long-lasting effect. The only real lingering thing I have is a little bit of numbness in my legs and feet, and they tell me that's because, you know, I was prone and I was horizontal for long enough to where you did some damage to the nerves. And apparently those are the last things that come back. They take months, maybe even a year. But, you know, on balance, just keeping a close eye on stuff. And I think all the time about people who are, you know, dealing with long-term effects. I think all the time about people who were much younger than me and in better shape than me, frankly, before I got ill, that didn't make it out. And it's just important that our community at every level, that we remind people, especially now that we're heading into the winter months, really nervous about that. And I think that we really need to care for one another. We need to think about others. We need to practice the best safety measures, and information is empower. We need to get information to our communities so we can empower our communities. They deserve to be empowered to protect themselves and each other.
Yeah, we're glad, Steve, that you're doing so well. We really are. Thank you, and we'll have you later after the election.
Yes, I'd like to come
for a
back
longer period of time.
Yes,
okay.
Love that.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you all so much.
Thank you very much. Our Becca Fielding Miller has just been admitted she's here with us. Becca, do you want to say something? Becca is one of our VPs. So that's the reason I'm bringing her. We'll see her later. Hi, Becca. Can you stay later? Can you give us one of your epidemiology updates, rants later, maybe at around 8?
Yeah,
Depending on-
Esther dependent. Yeah, 8 I can do. I'm also stepping in for Kathy this evening, so I'll be around taking notes.
Yes, Becca used to be our secretary, and now she is our VP, but she's returning to her old job. So thank you. We appreciate that very much. Thanks. Okay, so yes, you have experience. Okay, so right now I would like to recognize Doug Case. Doug, do you have something that you want to say as a representative of Senator Atkins?
Yes, thank you. First of all, to those of you who were able to make the fundraiser today with Secretary Hillary Clinton, thank you for joining us. I think it was a wonderful event. The senator is, along with the County Democratic Party, is hosting a phone banking to Arizona this coming Sunday, October the 25th, starting at noon. Arizona, as you probably know, is a really critical state, both in terms of the presidential race, but also in terms of getting Mark Kelly elected. And a key thing there is it's a special election. So he will take office on November 30th, and that can have some important strategic advantages to us. And so it's a very critical state. And if you can spend an hour or two of your time on Sunday helping us do that, that would be wonderful. And I'll put in the chat a RSVP link, and then I also will send to Susan a graphic that you can put into your Facebook accounts. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Doug. So we have we're running. Do we have? I can slip in another candidate. Let's see, I know we have Rob Howard. Do you want to slip in, Rob, while we're waiting for Mr. Vu? I don't think Mr. Vu is here yet. Rob, you're a candidate. Do you want to talk? Mr. Howard?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. We've been kind of missing folks lately because there's so much going on. But again, running for Oceanside mayor, one of the things I want to share with you, the Labor Council each year does a huge food and toy distribution during the holidays. The food is going to be worked because of COVID through the food bank as opposed to people making donations and other things. But what we do need, just putting it out there, we're collecting toys, particularly around toys for the younger ones because they don't get everything that's going on. And this really is one way where you can share with them, hey, look, regardless of what's going on, let's have some fun. So I'm not sure how we want to do it. We're collecting them. If there's something maybe the club can do to collect, we'll pick them up and get them down to the Labor Council because they put them age by age so that we can make sure that we process them through the line. So that's one of the big things that's going on that we've been talking about. Other than that, we are phone banking. So I'll put my info in the chat because I see a big stop sign.
Yes, good. Okay. So Rob, if you could send me a graphic or something, some details, I can. It looks like I've got two things now that probably I could do a MailChimp on. All right. Okay.
Will do.
So thank you. Let's see. It is 6:45. Is Mr. I don't see Mr. Vu yet.
Susan, can I say something?
Who is that? Luana?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I recognized your voice. I haven't seen you. Yes, of course. Please.
Just wanted to say that we're close to the end, and one of the things I've been doing is talking to moms. I've had a chance to talk to the moms who want schools to open, and I've had a chance to talk to the moms who don't want schools to open. And the common denominator that I've heard from all of them is that they just want some communication. And so I really hope that you can appreciate the importance of having someone like me on the board who will actually listen to them. Even if I don't give them the answers they want, I will hold myself accountable to communicating with them regularly and transparently. If you're interested in supporting my campaign, I can put some information in the chat. I am really hoping that I can continue to maintain a resource base that allows me to stay competitive and effective in my communication as I do voter outreach. I'll be doing some phone banking later this week as well as in the coming week. And I'll leave my contact information and I'll be happy to give you any details. And I do have more yard signs if anyone would like one to show visible support for my campaign. Thank you for all the support you've given me so far and for the opportunity to speak.
Oh, Luana, do you want to just say one more time what you're running for?
I'm running, I guess I should have included that part. I'm running for San Diego Unified School District's Board of Education for District E, but this is in the general election. San Diego Unified School Board races are city-wide races. So if you live within the boundaries of San Diego Unified School District, you can vote for me. And even if you don't, you can still encourage other people to do so.
Yes, and you are our endorsed candidate. And I think I think I understand that was a plea for money. So if anybody has a couple of 20s or something to spare for Luana, that would be great. That's a good candidate too. She's a great candidate. We want to get her elected.
Yeah, and unfortunately I can only take donations from people.
Right. We couldn't, as a club, we couldn't donate money to her. Yeah, we couldn't donate money to her. Do you have any texting set up by any chance? Because I'm texting for Tim Nader, and I just wondered if you had any texting that you had set up, Luana.
I do have texting set up, and anyone who would like to join the campaign, just let me know and I'll set you up as a texter.
Okay, all right. Okay, could you just give us some contact information, put it in the chat. How we can, yeah, because I don't mind texting. I don't like calling.
All right, thank you.
I'll text till the cows come home. So, okay, I'll put that, I'll send that around, that information around too. Okay, let's see. Is Mr. Vu here? I told him 6:50, but I was hoping we could, let's see. I don't see Mr. Vu. So do we have any other candidates that we could slip in? Any other candidates? I thought I heard something. Okay, I'm happy to entertain you. So Mr. Vu, we'll just get it queued up for him. As all of you know, he is the Registrar of Voters. He's the director of the Registrar of Voters, and this is going to be just a brief. It's a brief discussion describing how this election is going to be. The November election is going to be conducted, because COVID has changed just everything. It's disrupted everything. As many of you know, you can track your vote. When I sent around in the email, I said how you can track your ballot. If you need, there are links in there for discussions from the League of Women Voters, from 350.org, and the county party and the Women's Club. Also, the endorsement page link is in the email, so use it. And if you're still befuddled after our discussion tonight, then give me a call. My number is on that email, and I'll be happy to talk to you about any one of the propositions. And if you don't like what I say, I'll field you off to another one of our officers, and you can talk to them. So we're happy to do that. So Mr. Vu is still not here, and he was confirmed today. So it is 6:50. Mr. Vu should be here any second.
Susan, can you hear me? It's Michelle.
Yes, Michelle, we can hear you.
Can I just say one quick thing? A lot of people are a little confused because today is the last day to register to vote.
Right.
But that's only for you to get your regular ballot. But I want everyone to know that if someone has not registered by tonight at 11:59, they still can vote. The difference is they will fill out a conditional application and a provisional ballot. But
Michelle, Mr. Vu is here, and I'm sure he's going to be talking about some of that also.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Vu.
Hi, how are you, Susan? How are you?
I'm fine.
That sounded like Michelle.
It was Michelle. It was Michelle. So I am going to, I've introduced you, Mr. Vu, to everyone, and I'm going to give you your own spotlight and turn the meeting over to you. Okay, you have until 7, you have our attention until 7:30. So our members can at some point after you finish your discussion, I will let our members ask questions of you.
Great,
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
well, is it possible that I can share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. While you're doing that, let me just kind of maybe set tee up the overall conversation. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you at E-15 is what we call it here, as if you're an election official, E-15 being 15 days prior to election day, and all the things that we are still needing to wrap up and prepare for this upcoming election. But I really do want to talk with you about how we really got to this point of conducting the election. Certainly, this is my first time of conducting an election under the cloud of a pandemic, and never did I thought in my wildest dreams that we would have to be pivot this hard when it comes down to the election itself. And but we're faced with it. I think there's been a disruption, not in everyone's daily lives, but now it also now extends to how people vote, and now having to do so safely, other than making sure that your ballot is safe, but also to keep your health and well-being safe as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my slide here, my slide deck, and talk with you about how we even got to this point in time. Can you see my screen, I hope? Yes. Okay, yep. Great. Thank you. Let me kind of tee up, if I can, how this election is shaping out up to be. And some of these numbers are actually old now, right? So as Michelle was talking right before I came on, is that we're over 1.9 million registered voters now. This number is actually old. If we looked at the total number of registered voters on the registration rolls, we just crested over 1.94 million registered voters in our county. That represents 87% of all eligible voters are now registered to vote in our county. If we were talking about this time in 2016, we would be sitting at 70% of the eligible voters are registered to vote. So we've increased it by 17% in terms of the total eligible citizens are now registered at 87%. And if we looked at just the total number that we've added onto the voter registration rolls, we've added over 285,000 new registrants since the November 2016 election. That is just an amazing number to wrap my mind around. And I'm sure we're just at close to that 2 million registered voter mark. I don't see us getting there, but we will ultimately see when everyone reaches today's registration deadline, and we'll get into what Michelle was talking about, which is still the ability to participate in the election, even if you did not register by midnight tonight. The total number of sample ballot and voter information pamphlets, although we have the official ballots and every single voter received a mail ballot, in this upcoming election, we will be sending out or have sent out over 2 million sample ballot and voter information pamphlets. So why is that number higher than the total number of registered voters? Well, it's because we served language voters as well. So Spanish, Filipino, Vietnamese, and Chinese are federally covered language that we need to provide election materials to. So not only do we send them an English sample ballot and voter information pamphlet, we also send them a sample ballot pamphlet in their respective language. These are individuals that have requested their materials to be sent to them in one of these required languages, or individuals who were born in these either Spanish, Filipino, Vietnamese, or Chinese speaking language countries, so where they were born. Now, when we talk about the total number of seasonal workers that we will bring on, we go from a staff of 69 full-time staff members. Actually, we only have 64 right now. We have a couple of vacancies, but we balloon up to the size of 4,500 plus individuals. So all of our poll workers are now going to be effectively seasonal staff members for us because of the pandemic. To create certainty in this upcoming election, we decided to, as opposed to paying a stipend, we are now paying every single one of these poll workers, all of our poll workers, and some of you may be serving as a poll worker for us, an hourly wage, anywhere from $14.25 to $18 per hour. So that's as a result of making sure that we were certain that we had enough people to serve on Election Day, as well as now the 3 days leading up to Election Day, because our polling locations, the number that we will have will be open for a 4-day window as opposed to just a 1-day window. Military and overseas voters, now that we're well within the election, not only are we at 14,000, we're actually at now 15,000 of our military and overseas voters have been mailed their ballot. In fact, they get their ballots well before all of us that live domestically here in the United States, here in San Diego County. They actually started receiving their mail ballots as well as, or an emailed ballot back on September 18th, 19th timeframe of this year. So they've already started voting and returning their ballots well before we ever did when we received our respective mail ballots. Now, I mentioned that we received, we have 4 federally covered languages other than English. We also have 4 state covered languages that you may not be aware of. We're also covered under the state's version of the Voting Rights Act. It's called the California Voting Rights Act. And those 4 covered languages on the state level, not as onerous as the federal side, are Laotian, Japanese, Korean, and Arabic. So in those specific languages, we have to provide services in specific precincts within our county. In the federally covered languages, we're covered countywide. In these other state covered languages, we're covered in specific precincts within the county. The total number of contests that are on the ballot, there's 196 of them. And when you think about those 196 and all the jurisdictions that are participating in the elections beyond the president, beyond congressional, beyond city offices, beyond city council districts, as well as board of supervisors districts. You've got water districts, community college districts, high school districts, and the like, and it goes on and on and on. But when you think about those that will be on the ballot, there's 196 of those. And when you think about all the machinations of those 196 that overlap one another, it creates 842 types of the ballot. All of you received one of the 842 types of the ballot. But in this upcoming election, not only do you have to consider those 842, but you have to multiply those by the total number of languages that we are federally supported by, that we have to federally covered by, which are those 5 languages: the Spanish, Filipino, Vietnamese, Chinese, as well as the English. So when you think about that times the 842, it creates the 4,210 ballot variations in this upcoming election. San Diego County is one of the largest, most complex election jurisdictions in the country. Not only are we large in population, registered population, being a mega county in terms of the total number of registered voters that we have, but we also are complex in terms of the total number of political jurisdictions, political districts that overlap our county. And as I mentioned again, we just aren't thinking about a presidential election. That's the one thing that everyone thinks of. But in this upcoming election, there's 195 other contests that are on the ballot, everywhere from cities all the way down to things like water district and fire protection districts that are out there. So let's talk about turnout really quickly. I'm kind of excited about this. And the reason why is because we are now in the full swing of this election. We're only 15 days away. We sent out mail ballots starting last on October 5th. And right now we have over 430,000 individuals that have returned their mail ballots back to our office. So it's already shaping up to be a good turnout election. This is a 300%. This time in 2016, it's a 300% increase of total number of mail ballots that have been returned back to our office. It's just been amazing. All of our mail ballot drop-off locations that have been receiving mail ballots from voters and dropping off their mail ballots. There was, in fact, in one specific case in the Dove Library in Carlsbad, we had such a long line that the actual city police had to come in to do traffic control. And map out a better course because at that library, not only was it individuals that were trying to pick up books, but they were also individuals that were trying to drop off their mail ballots. And guess what? It was many more people that are trying to drop off their mail ballots than people that were trying to pick up their books. And so we're very appreciative of all the city libraries as well as the county libraries who've offered the use of their facility or really their parking lot to allow voters to drop off their mail ballots to one of our mail ballot drop-off monitors that is out there. But let's talk about the turnout. If we see, like we have in the last 4 presidential general elections, we should see around no less than a 79.5% turnout in the election. And the highest turnout election was approximately 84% turnout. That was the Obama election, the first Obama election in 2008. In the last 2016 presidential general election, we saw an 81.5% turnout. So as you can see, we're driving to perhaps equal to, if not more than, the turnout that we saw in 2008, but no less than, I see, an 80% turnout if we looked at the last 4 average turnout elections in the last 4 presidential general elections. We will ultimately see. We have never ran into this issue. This is the first time there's been a presidential election where we're seeing, all the policies that the legislature has passed, things like online voter registration, the new motor voter law coming into play here, and we will ultimately see whether or not the total number of registered voters, which is at a record high, of seeing those individuals coming out to vote. So I'll be interested to see whether or not the percentage is impacted as a result of this high record number of registered voters that are on the voter registration rolls. Certainly, what I do see is the total number of people that will vote in this upcoming election will be the highest that we've ever seen in the history of our county. And we'll see what that raw total number will be when we certify the election on December 3rd. Okay. So all of you should know by now that we've kind of set into motion after the March presidential primary election, that we had to cut over to something different. that the governor issued 2 executive orders that all registered voters were going to receive a mail ballot, that in-person polling location was dramatically going to change. And for us, we had to launch into a very comprehensive voter education and outreach plan. We encapsulate it here in the Vote Safer San Diego logo that you can see here to kind of encapsulate all the things that were going to change in the upcoming election to make sure that voters were kept safe, not only from the pandemic, but also to know how to treat their respective ballots, whether it's the mail ballots or voting at a respective polling locations. And so we launched into the most robust and comprehensive voter education and outreach campaign that we've ever done in this department, in this agency of ours. We've spent over $1.5 million to launch into this to make sure that we were reaching out to all the various age groups that are out there. You know, we've launched into digital ads, social media that we've done before, but much more extensive than we've ever done before. We sent out a countywide mailer in early August to inform voters about the changes that were going to happen. So we've been marching down this path along this, if you will, this election story, and we've been trying to inform the public about all these respective changes, about how this election was going to unveil itself to all voters that are out there. And so, as you can see here, these were our respective goals: to make sure that no voter, that over 1.9 million registered voters were going to be surprised about how this election was going to be conducted, and make sure that we were informing voters in all the various mediums that we were afforded to reach out to voters. In fact, we have one more direct mailing that will go out to voters. If you did not send in your mail ballot by October 14th, if we didn't receive your mail ballot by October 14th, you're going to be receiving a kind of a reminder card in the mail starting in the next couple of days that you will receive, just kind of reminding you about how this election is going to operate, that you can track your mail ballot to vote that mail ballot and get it back to us. And if not that, then here's your new assigned polling location for the upcoming election. So again, all of these was in an effort because we were pivoting so hard in a new model of voting that you really don't do as an election official, as an election administrator, you just don't do during the biggest turnout election ever. In fact, in my case, in my career, it's something that you kind of want to kick the can on and just let that go to the next registrar. You know, you never want to change the voting model because you know the dramatic changes that voters need to be informed about, and all of the confusion that might come about as a result of it. But I think not only has our office done a great job in communicating and doing Zoom presentations, grassroots like we're doing today, but also trying to inform the public. And I think it is resonating because what part of that demonstration of that is the total number of people that have returned their mail back to our office thus far. Let me just kind of tease out a little bit why we made the decisions that we did. Now, you may grouse as to why are there going to be fewer polling locations than there was in the March election or what was contemplated, which we were planning on having 1,600 precincts and polling locations out there on election day. But as you can see here, who works at the polls? Well, a good population of the people that work as a volunteer poll worker are in the 65 plus age group, as well as now, because of the pandemic, the same population that's impacted and at high risk of having complications due to the receiving, if they did get contracted with the virus. The fact that we had learning lessons about polling locations from other jurisdictions throughout the entire country that had to conduct a primary election under a pandemic. And they saw situations where private locations, private business owners who said yes to that they could use, that the elections administrator, elections office could use their location as a polling location prior to pandemic, to say, no, you couldn't use the location as a polling location when the pandemic hit, and pull the rug underneath ultimately voters as well as elections administrators as well, creating confusion for voters, creating frankly a mad scramble for elections administrators to get that information out to voters so that there wasn't going to be any when they were conducting their primary election. These were learning lessons. And so that was greatly impacted too, not only because of liability and not for the fault of the poll owners themselves, but because of liability purposes, right? When you have the highest turnout election in a 4-year cycle, and perhaps ever in the history of our county. Small locations like pizza parlors or neighborhood garages were frankly not suited for a pandemic. It's just not too large enough to have enough voting booths set up to ensure social distancing, and also to ensure that voters were not going to be having to stand in a long, lengthy line, and that it was not going to create a super spreader event of the virus. So we had to think differently about this election, and the fundamentals of elections were now impacted. You have to have polling locations, you have to have poll workers, and how are you going to be able to do that under a cloud of a pandemic, and knowing that these two areas were greatly impacted. I really want to show you from a data perspective what that looks like. So as you can see here, the March election, we had over 7,000 poll workers that served during that election. And as you can see, 30% of our population come from our 65 plus age group. And when you think about that group now being in question, it creates uncertainty. And us as election officials, we cannot operate and conduct an election under a whirl of uncertainty. We have to create certainty for ourselves. That way we can relay and communicate that to the public about what the election is going to look like. If not, it becomes chaotic and confusing, and we just frankly could not afford that to occur. But as you look at that 30%, you have to really look at the other spectrum, which is our high school student population. What are they doing? They're distance learning right now. And they represent 20% of our poll worker population, and those individuals are also in question. So we really had to think differently about how this election was going to be conducted. Polling places. Let's talk about the 1,548 precincts that we had in March's election, where 69% reported to a private location. It's too small of locations, or one in which the private owner could say no to us as serving as a polling location for voters out there. So we really did have to look at our public facilities, locations that were like recreation centers, community centers, cafeterias for schools, multi-purpose rooms that were at schools, just large locations that were no less than 2,000 square feet in space to really serve voters that were out there, but also in a way that was accessible, and not in terms of just voters with disabilities, but also socioeconomic, transportation corridors, population densities, all of these things that we have to take into account to ensure that the level of access for voters was going to be equal to that, to the extent possible, for voters to get to, should they want an in-person experience, particularly if they did not want to vote that respective mail ballot that was out there. We have to take in consideration of things like cities versus unincorporated areas, rural versus urban areas, particularly in our county, where over 4,000 square miles of space we have to cover because we have such a large area swaths of rural areas as well as urban areas throughout the entire county. And how do we provide equipoise in the distribution of all these physical sites across the entire county? So ultimately, as I mentioned, bottom line is the purple area here is what the state legislature and governor allowed us to do, as well as mandated us to do. That is, every voter would receive a mail ballot, and then giving us an additional option, which is option 2 in the purple area here, about what in-person voting locations would look like. And then ultimately launching into a robust campaign, and for us is much more robust than even what is legislatively mandated. You can see and compare and contrast what we did in March versus the blue area, which is what we're doing in November's election. But I want to key off of a couple of things. You should know now that we have fewer locations as opposed to 1,500 or nearly 1,600 that was going to operate for one day. We now have 235 much larger locations to facilitate social distancing, as well as the turnout that we're expecting at these locations. But as opposed to one day, they'll be open for 4 days, October 31st through November 3rd. So I don't see this as fewer locations. I see the change here, this model of change, as trade-offs. You know, on election day in a neighborhood traditional precinct world, we would only open up these respective locations, these 1,600 locations, for a 13-hour period on election day. Now, to really distribute voters across 235 sites across a 4-day period to manage the turnout, as well as to manage any potential situation of spreading of the virus. I see that as more of a trade-off. Let me also talk about part of the trade-off here is that not only are there going to be much larger locations open for a 4-day period, part of the model here is that we have to have double the amount of mail ballot drop-off locations that are quadruple the amount of time that they're open. So because of everyone's going to receive a mail ballot. So that was another trade-off. And certainly voters are taking heed to it because we have seen such a tremendous turnout of people dropping off their mail ballot or sending it back through the U.S. Postal Service. As I mentioned before, you probably have heard me say this many a times since I've done so many different interviews. The mail ballot comes with a prepaid postage envelope. You do not need to put a stamp on that envelope to return your mail ballot. That's why one of the reasons why my highest recommendation is returning your mail ballot through the U.S. Postal Service. I did mine today. I dropped off my mail ballot after my wife and I voted this past weekend, dropped it off at a U.S. Postal Service box, a collection box. Actually, my wife is returning hers through a mail ballot drop-off box, just because, we're selfish. I'm an elections administrator, so I want to kind of see, when am I going to get my notifications? What's the elapsed time of dropping off my mail ballot through the U.S. Postal Service, and when will the ROV will receive it? Also, it demonstrates my confidence in the U.S. Postal Service as well, because they really have never done us wrong before. And it's not like we haven't been a county that has voted in high numbers in terms of mail ballots. I mean, if we didn't conduct this election in a world of a pandemic and we just adopted the same model as we would have already sent 78% of the electorate a mail ballot because they are signed up to be a permanent mail ballot voter. Okay, so no changes there. And I apologize if I'm talking quick. It's because there's so much to offer in how this election is going to be conducted. Many of you already know because we're all experiencing it right now. But let's go back to those poll workers really quickly, and you as voters. If you plan on not voting that mail ballot, you're still assigned one of those 235 polling locations. Why are we doing that? The reason why we are strategically sending voters to an assigned polling location is A, voters are used to going to an assigned polling location. And 2 is because of the pandemic and the turnout of the election. If you think about those 235 super polls locations that we've established, that's about 28% more than is required by law. Why? The reason for us, it has never been about the legislature's threshold of 1 for every 10,000 registered voters that you have to have a super polls location. For us, was always about data and what we think the total number of people that will go to a polling place to vote, to have an in-person polling place experience. And when we did the numbers, when we looked at past turnouts, and we looked at the most recent 2016 presidential general election, we thought to ourselves that there's going to be anywhere from 350 to 400,000 people that could potentially go to a polling place if they don't vote their mail ballot, if the pandemic doesn't scare them, if because they received a mail ballot, because we are highly encouraging voters that they don't want to do any of those things, that we have to be ready for a large in-person turnout. So we establish many more locations than we really do need to legally. Again, part of the reason why is because we were trying to spread voters out across 235 sites. We don't want any long lines to be created in one location and a desert of no one showing up at another location. So it's really important for voters to get to their assigned polling location should they want an in-person experience come election day or starting on October 31st, November 1st, or November 2nd as well. All right, poll workers, as opposed to needing 9,000 poll workers for one day, we now need 3,500 to 3,600 poll workers for up to 9 days, right? So again, another trade-off. It might look like this is going to be a cost-saving, taxpayer cost-saving exercise here. Please know, we are going to be running millions more dollars in terms of preparing for this election than we ever fathomed it would be conducted under. Part of that is not only all the personal protective equipment that we have to purchase, but the fact of like poll workers. Normally poll workers get paid a stipend for one day. Here we're paying an hourly wage upwards of 9 days across 3,500 to 3,600 individuals. So you can see the numbers now adding up. between the 4 days, the fact that we are quadrupling the amount of time of our mail ballot drop-off locations, and we're paying all those staff locations a wage, an hourly wage as well, and that there are double the amount of locations there. That alone, the mail ballot drop-off program alone is over $1 million itself. Okay, so let me go ahead and continue. I'm not going to go into really much of this slide right here, these various points, other than the last one, which is if there is any concerns about returning your mail ballot through the U.S. Postal Service, know that the legislature stepped in here and said, as long as that ballot is postmarked by Election Day, which has always been the case, and received 17 days after Election Day, that ballot is timely cast. They added an additional 14-day windows because it used to be called postmark plus 3. That is postmarked by Election Day and received 3 days afterwards. Now it's postmarked plus 17. So please know that the legislature has stepped in terms of all of this as well. And when it comes down to the overall capacity of our ability, again, we've been building for this. After the 2016 presidential general election, we've always had the level of infrastructure to kind of manage mail ballots because that's your preference. 78% of the electorate would have received a mail ballot anyhow. So we frankly have been strongly suited and built to prepare for an election like this. We didn't realize that it was going to be under a cloud of a pandemic, but unlike my colleagues in back east or in other states, San Diego County, the state of California, is strongly suited to prepare for a situation like this. And we are experiencing with all the mail ballots and being able to process all those mail ballots into the count. So let's talk about in-person really quickly. In-person experience, it'll be different. No longer will you sign into a paper roster of voters. Now you'll be signing into an electronic poll book, an iPad, which has the list of all registered voters, and not just one, there'll be 7 of them. 7 check-in stations on average at every single one of our super polls locations. Again, that's to ensure the streaming of voters is going to be as efficient as possible so that a voter can receive their ballot, retire inside a voting booth, one of 24 on average voting booths, to then drop their ballot inside the ballot box. Let me just say that these electronic poll books allows less provisional ballots to be cast as well. And the reason why is because we have the disposition of every voter's mail ballot, whether or not a voter has returned it or not. And if it hasn't been returned, we have the ability to suspend that mail ballot that we issued because we're tracking all mail ballots and reissue now a regular polling place ballots. Before, it was going to be a provisional ballot if a voter could not surrender their mail ballot. Now, that's no longer the case for this upcoming election because we are implementing over 2,000 electronic poll books across those 235 sites, okay? As I talk about the in-person experience, just know that all the requirements are there. Personal protective equipment. We have 21 pallets of sneeze guards. That represents over 2,000 sneeze guards, those plexiglass shields that you see between the check-in stations of our poll workers as well as the voter. Voters, there will be protocols before they can enter inside the building. If they're not wearing a mask, those, whether it's for medical reasons or whether it's because they refuse to wear a mask, those individuals will be voting outside. We will make accommodations so we do not infringe upon their right to vote, but they will be voting outside in a separate location. When you go inside, you'll be hand sanitizing. You'll be offered gloves. If you don't have a mask, you'll be, because you forgot it, we will have masks available. Poll workers will have face shields as well as masks, and those individuals that will be cleaning all the respective ballot marking devices or any shareable products, those individuals will be wearing gloves, and there will be a protocol in place. In fact, every location will have a site-specific plan, a layout of how to ensure that all voting booths are 6 feet apart, that the table and voters have hand sanitizing bottles, as well as hand sanitizing wipes and hand sanitizing dispensers, whether it's at the entrance or at the exit. All of that is in place, and our poll workers have been trained. Our poll workers are to be screened every single day through a temperature check. We've purchased over 350 or nearly 400 temperature check thermometers guns to check their temperature before working that respective day. all poll workers as well as staff that's working for our office have the ability to get tested. All 4,600 of us have the ability to get tested should we need to get tested for COVID-19. It's up to them should they need to get tested, and that is what the county is offering across all poll workers, across all seasonal staff members, across all permanent staff members as well. As we talk about all of this in-person sites and poll workers, let me just get to the heart of it. The safer way of voting is voting that mail ballot and returning it through a trusted source. And there are good practices of voting that mail ballot. And that includes signing the envelope, sealing the ballot inside the envelope, and returning it to a trusted source, whether it's the U.S. Postal Service collection boxes, mail ballot drop-off locations, or any one of our super polls locations that are out there. So let me kind of get to the heart of this really quickly in terms of the precincts themselves. This is what it would look like if we were going to run a traditional neighborhood precinct election. But as you can see here, because we're consolidating more heavily, those precincts are going to be much larger in size, and they're going to be based off of those ballot types that we talked about, those 842 ballot types. Once we are able to then create geographies of regions and areas based off of a person's eligible contest, we are then able to then put where the physical sites were going to be. And let me just say, all except all of the 235 sites, all but 6 of them are public facilities. Again, to create certainty in our ability to use the locations without someone pulling the rug underneath us because of COVID-19 or for some other reason that is out there. Okay, you should have all received this back in August. This is the primer that we gave and sent to every single registered voter in our county at that time. And it gave you, everything that was going to occur with this upcoming election to start preparing you for the upcoming elections. After that, we started sending you, all registered voters, a sample ballot and voter information pamphlet, whether that was hard copy or through email. In this upcoming election, we asked voters to sign up to receive their pamphlet by email, and we're now at upwards of 180,000 voters received their pamphlet by email as opposed to through snail mail. Okay. And then after that, on October 5th, which is always 29 days before, voters started receiving their mail ballot inside their mail ballot in their mailbox. So, and this is what it looked like. You should have all received this. If you haven't seen it, we also listed on the back. This is called the wrap. These two things right here is called the front. This is the front of the wrap. This is the back of the wrap. And it kind of gave you all you needed to know about the ballot that was going to be inside. But it also gave you your closest 3 mail ballot drop-off locations for you based off of your residence address that was on there, okay? And also provided you guidance about how to sign your envelope. And our recommendation is looking at your driver's license and signing it the same way there. And of course, there's the ballot. Now, the good thing with this election is we only had a 1-card ballot as opposed to a 2-card ballot, okay? That was actually a sigh of relief because a 2-card ballot presents a huge amount of logistical issues for us of having a 2-card ballot like what we saw in 2016 and 2018's general election. I've already talked with you about this. The U.S. Postal Service has a lot larger, more robust infrastructure and thousands of collection boxes that they pick up from nearly every single day other than Sunday. So that's our first recommendation. If not that, there's the 126 mail ballot drop-off locations that are currently open for a person to drop off their mail ballot. And if not that, then on October 31st, you have 235 sites to go to drop off your mail ballot there. Those are your trusted sources in our eyes. Don't let a third-party individual or organization get in the way of that unless you trust them, okay? Unless you trust them. All right, one last piece. I mentioned that we were going to send another card out. If we did not receive your mail ballot by October 14th, you're going to receive a card like this in there. And it effectively says, if you've already voted, don't worry about the card and return that mail ballot, that is. If you have not, again, get that mail ballot back to us. If not, you want to have that in-person experience, that's okay. Here's your new polling location to get to. And most likely everyone's polling location has changed in this upcoming election. Very few would not have a polling location change. All right, let's talk about voter education and all the things that we've been doing. We talked about being ready. We talked about make sure that you're registered to vote or verify your registration well in advance of us sending you a mail ballot. We talked about sending you that mail ballot on October 5th and all the different ways about tracking that mail ballot. We talked about the trusted source, sign, seal, return, track your mail ballot to a trusted sources that are out there. We've engaged high school students to create artwork for us as well. So this is only a small piece of the larger picture of our outreach campaign. And remember, everything that we do in English, we also do in our federally covered languages, like you can see here in terms of material. We talked about the tracking your mail ballot. If you haven't done so, you can track it in a couple of ways. Where's My Ballot is a service where you can get push notifications as to the ballot getting to you, or as it's traveling back to us through the U.S. Postal Service, or if you drop it off at one of the mail ballot drop-off locations. By now, informed delivery through the U.S. Postal Service is not necessarily relevant any longer, because that is telling you when you should expect your mail ballot inside your mailbox through getting an email and an image of it in your inbox of your email account. Okay. All right, time is waning. There's only a couple of days left. Really, the last day to register to vote is today. After that, it's the conditional voter registration period. Tomorrow is going to be the write-in candidacy. If you want to still run for office as a write-in candidate, tomorrow's the deadline. So make sure you do so, but you still have to go out and come to our respective office to qualify. And then October 31st will be the beginning of our Super Polls locations that will be open for that 4-day window. And last thing, if there is any voter out there that does not know about how this election is going to operate, please do reach out to them and provide them all of this information. Go to sdvote.com if there's any confusion, any misinformation out there. Do not let anything happening and discussed on a national level dissuade you from how you normally vote. Yes, there are changes, but don't let the national discussion change your psyche. Vote how you want to vote in this upcoming election, knowing that there is a pandemic, and know that the Registrar of Voters is encouraging you to vote that mail ballot. Having said that, I'm going to turn the time back over to Susan for any questions. Susan, you're on mute.
Oh, I know. So we have a couple of questions, but before I start with the questions, I really would like to thank our member, Lise Pipkin-Allen, for arranging this, and we really appreciate that. Thanks, Elise. The first question is from Rob Howard. If we know people who want to work as poll workers, how do they contact you?
Contact us through 858-565-5800, or go to our website at sdvote.com, and then there's a volunteer button, poll worker volunteer button that you can select from and fill out an application. Let me just say that the total number of poll workers, we're at 100% as of today of all the positions being filled. But we have individuals continuing to drop. So we still want individuals to sign up, and maybe not for this upcoming election, but any future election as well. Again, just because this election is very important, all elections are important. So we want to make sure that we have enough individuals that want to volunteer of their time for any future election as well. So we may not call upon you this election, but we may call upon you in a future election. So we would definitely want your contact information and your name.
Okay, so Michelle, you're next, and then Jen French, and then our resident Dr. Dr. Rebecca Fielding-Miller. Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Yes. Good evening, Michael. Many of us have worked as poll watchers.
Yes.
And we're used to going into the poll and getting that paper copy to see who has voted. How is that going to work this time?
As to who has voted, right? So you're talking about the for GOTV efforts.
Exactly. Right. If I want to see if the person who is supporting my candidate has gotten to the poll or not yet.
The way you'll be able to tell is by going to the site manager, and the site manager will have an electronic list of who's voted and who hasn't voted.
Okay. Michelle?
Okay, so we have to bother Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of this same thing is there'll be an electronic list. I need to really look at that, Michelle, because I think we also were contemplating of posting it online too. But as you know, posting online there might be some applications that people need to fill out before you can be allowed to see that list.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Jen French. Jen's next.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for the presentation, the information. My question is basically who is in charge of enforcement of the PPE requirements? When we dropped off our ballot, unfortunately, one of the women sitting right next to the other woman at the table was not wearing her mask at the library. And, we know that there are a big group of people who won't wear masks. And so I'm wondering how the other voters and the poll workers will be kept safe from each other and themselves.
Same thing is a part of our site-specific plan. Part of that is laying out all of the requirements and the protocols, the safety protocols. So the site manager is the person that should, at the Super Polls location, should be enforcing all of our poll workers to wear and accommodate all of the necessary aspects of keeping everyone safe and healthy inside that polling place. So the site manager, and that's one of the reasons why we even introduced a site manager, is because we wanted to make sure that there was continuity, as well as to make sure that everything was being abided by, not just PPE, but also the process itself. So when you think about the poll worker training and our site managers, the site managers have had several weeks worth of training. In fact, they had a full week worth of training, and there was 2 groups of them, group 1 and group 2. Group 1 was 1 week, group 2 was another week. And now they are launching into this week, training all of the poll workers that their team of nearly 14 individuals on average. And let me just say the poll workers, as opposed to having a 2-hour training, now it's a 2-day training. Okay, so and part of the 2-day training is to learn about all the respective administrative operations of elections, but also a component and a module of that is the proper use of PPE, the donning and doffing of gloves. I didn't frankly realize all of this as well until we started talking with our public health officials. There's proper ways of putting on your gloves and taking off the gloves, as well as when to use gloves, right? In fact, when we first started talking with our public health officials, they did say that really the CDC does not recommend anyone wearing gloves because the number one is to often use your washing of your hands. That's your primary method. But when we started talking with them about that individuals would sanitize in advance of, that is using hand sanitizer in advance of donning the gloves, and it's a single-use glove because they would throw that away after they have voted, it reduces the spread of the virus that is out there. When it comes down to our mail ballot drop-off monitors, we did hear about situations of individuals not wearing the mask or not fully wearing their respective masks. And once we found that out, we want that feedback, certainly. We reached out to those monitors and let them know that we have to be serious about this. And part of the protocols here for their safety, as well as any voter that would be dropping out their mail ballot, they need to wear their respective mask and, to certain degrees, their shields if that is warranted as well. So, I apologize that you had that experience, and certainly we want to know when those occur.
Let's see, Becca, Dr. Miller.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I was so glad to hear all the safety measures you listed off for poll workers and people voting. And I was wondering what you all are doing to ensure there's enough ventilation in poll places as well.
I think the main thing is the biggest issue here is space, is that there are only a few locations, but the average size of space is about 2,000 square feet. And that's number one. Of course, propping up the door, open up the door is another. We're not really too much doing anything more than that, other than the flow of traffic, right? So the flow of traffic is you only are allowing so many people inside the location at any given time, particularly at the check-in station. And then there's 24. So you can only have so many people before the 24 voting booths, as well as the 7 people check-in stations are full. And if that's the case, then everyone needs to wait until someone exits. So that's one of a couple of ways that we're addressing the flow, and as well as propping open the doors as well.
Yvonne, you're next. Yvonne.
So I have 2 real quick questions. So can people vote at a location that it was not their assigned place? Can they use it like a voting center?
The answer to that question is yes, you can.
Okay.
The electronic poll books, as I mentioned, has the list of all registered voters in it. And we will have 7 as opposed to 1 ballot marking device, which is the new touchscreens. We introduced a new voting system in the March election. And the ballot marking devices, that's the new term for these units, because the reason why they're called ballot marking devices is because you make your selections on screen and prints out your paper ballot that you verify and drop into the ballot box. And that's what will count. As opposed to the old system, which is, it came on a kind of a paper tape. The fact is we will have 7 of those, and it will have all the variations of the ballot types. All those 4,210 variations of the ballot will be on there. So if a voter shows up at their unassigned polling location, they'll be able to vote and not vote a provisional ballot. They'll be able to vote their contest that they're eligible to vote on. But as I mentioned before, the reason why we are dissuading that from happening is because of what we saw in every election that I've tracked where a vote center model was implemented for its first election. And what happened? You saw 5 hours, 6-hour waiting lines in one location and 0 waiting lines in another location. So the way we've adopted this is strategically, because it's a presidential election, because there's a pandemic, is reinforcing to voters to get to your assigned polling locations to distribute voters across to it. Now, if a voter shows up at the wrong locations, we'll still be able to serve them and serve them correctly with the correct ballot that they're eligible to vote on.
Okay, super. And then my other question was, if people are going to use the US mail to deliver their ballot, should they have done that or do that now so they have a 2-week window?
We are recommending, Yvonne, is to do so 7 days in advance. So I think we put on October 27th as the date to, if you're going to send it back through the US Postal Service, to do it by October 27th. That should be a Tuesday, if I'm correct. Should be looking at a quick, it should be in the mail, yes, the 27th. It should be part of that mail ballot packet. If you look at the voter instructions, we give a recommended date on there. So it's October 27th. And if you miss that respective window, you can still send it through the US Postal Service, because as I mentioned, the law provides, so long as that ballot is postmarked by election day and received within 17 days, we can count that as timely cast. But our recommendation is to do it by the 27th. And then if not the 27th, you might want to drop it off at a mail ballot drop-off location.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm sorry, were we finished, Yvonne? Okay, let's see. Mary McKinsey? And then John, we have another question from Michelle Krug. Oh, and Rose Pope after that. Okay.
Yeah, no, actually, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to kind of wrap in Michelle's question via John to mine, because my question for you, Michael, was we're getting there are lots and lots of groups out there who want to send people into the polling places to make sure stuff doesn't go wrong. And I'm just wondering, have you heard this as something that's likely to happen to a larger extent here than it ever has? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just wondering how that works with all the COVID stuff and all that.
Yep.
And Michelle's question was, if you do see something going wrong at a polling station, is there a number to call?
So let me just talk with you. We always have, every election, we have observers. Major elections, we have observers. And so far we've been contacted by the same organizations that generally do observations. And so I don't see that as a big issue at this point in time. There may be more, but we've also notified them that because of COVID-19, because of space constraints, there may be a limited number of people that will be allowed to observe inside any respective location. And if there is a number of people at a specific site that wants to observe across multiple organizations, then we would do a rotation system, right? So let's say we would allow 2 people in the site, and if there's 5 people that want to see it, but only 2 allowed, then those 2 people after half an hour would have to cycle out, and the next 2 people would come in, just to make sure that they are number 1, allowed to observe, but 2, to take into account the pandemic itself. And know that we will take priority of order too, based off of our observer plan. And the observer plan calls out campaigns and political parties as primary organizations, as interested organizations, that is, as tertiary, and then individuals should a person show up. I haven't really heard a big number of people going out to observe. Now, what I generally hear is when one organization is going to do it, generally, let's say right or left, the other group is going to go and want to observe them, right? So it's like observers watching the observers, just to make sure that they're not going to interfere and intimidate voters from being able to cast their respective ballot. I anticipate we're going to get calls. We always have an observer hotline for voters to call into. Should if they see something incorrect, maybe it's our poll workers that are doing something incorrectly or handling something improperly. But also in the same regard, as we start receiving calls from poll workers about an observer, just know that we will try to de-escalate the respective situations, but know that if we get to the point where it's escalated through our site manager and to our management staff, and maybe perhaps to me, if I cannot reason with an individual, know that law enforcement will be close by to remove that individual for interviewing or intimidating voters or passing on rhetoric inside a respective polling locations out there. We've never had a major problem with poll watchers or observers. I expect that to happen this go around, and that cooler heads will ultimately prevail. I know that there is tense situations and polarization going on between how this country, how this community, how this county should function and be governed. But at the end of the day, it's going to come under the umbrella of the Registrar of Voters office, all 235 sites. And that umbrella means that every single one of these locations are a sanctuary for voters, and intimidation, interference, or rhetoric inside of polling locations won't be tolerated.
That's awesome. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Early in your talk, you talked about laws that have increased eligibility. Would you please repeat those laws?
So you got the new motor voter law, which is effectively you go to the DMV and you have to opt out of registering to vote, as opposed to opting in to register to vote. Normally you have to fill out an application to register to vote. When you go to the DMV, you're generally opting out of registering to vote. So that has increased the number. The other one is the ability to register online, where it's now 24/7 because we have an online voter registration system that is out there. And the fact that also is you have now conditional voter registration laws, which is effectively same-day registration. Although, today's registration deadline, what that means is that you won't get a mail ballot if you register after today's deadline. If you register by today's deadline, you'll still get an opportunity to get a ballot through the mail because of the governor's executive order. After that, the only way you are able to participate in the election is to get to a physical site, whether it's here all the way through November 3rd or at your assigned polling location starting on October 31st through November 3rd. You would register and vote same day. I do not recommend that to occur. I rather have voters or individuals register today by midnight than potentially create even more crowding and more lengthier lines on election day, particularly, or across those 4 days when the polling locations are open.
Thank you. How closely do you need to match your signature to your driver's license? Will the ballot be rejected because of signature differences?
So it's not a match. I think the UT, if you looked at the UT article that was published this past weekend, did a really great job of conveying how we liberally construe in favor of the voter. It's not, I've heard it has to be an exact match to how a person registered on their registration form. The answer to that is no. I never, took a picture of my registration form signature when I registered to vote. And not many people are going to do that. So they don't really know how they signed. And we know that voter signature changes over time. We know that people change their signatures when they register to vote as well. So what we are looking at is comparing signature of what's is on that envelope against what's on file. And it could come across multiple documents. And frankly, for us, as when I talk about the liberal construction of the law and we liberally construe in favor of the voter, we're looking at the unique characteristics of a signature, the spacing of how people sign, the slants of how they sign, and how they dot their I's or cross their T's, how they loop their F's or their L's or their J's or their F's. We accept a person who initial their envelopes because we can see the initial of the envelope are the same initials if we look at just the first letter of their first name and the first letter of their last name and combine them together to compare the signatures as opposed to trying to find an identical match.
Thank you. John has put in the observer hotline in the chat for everyone. And then there's the UT article about the mail ballot signature checks. All right,
Thank
Doug,
you very
you're
much.
next.
Yeah.
Doug,
Yep.
you're next.
Along those lines, if a signature doesn't match or if somebody forgets to sign, what is the process for correcting that?
Well, we have to legally notify them. And so we send them a letter notifying them that they have 2 days before I certify the election to cure their signature, whether it's because they failed to sign their envelope or because we've deemed their signature as not comparing. And let me get back to the comparison here. When we're doing a signature comparison, we escalate up. So just because a mail ballot is not, one person is looking at it and they say it doesn't compare, it gets escalated 2, 3, 4, perhaps 5 times before we finally determine that that signature does not compare. And at that point in time, we are required to send that voter a letter notifying them that they have 2 days before I certify the election to cure it and providing us a signature that we can compare against that would validate their respective mail ballot.
Do they have to come in person or can they do that by mail? How do they?
Either. They can drop it off at any one of the super polls location. They can email it to us. They can, take a picture and email it to us. They can drop it off here at the Registrar of Voters office. They can mail it to us. Any of the respective mediums that one could get the application back to our office, that affidavit.
Thank you.
How many days do you think it will take to count all the ballots this time?
Let me just say, I say this every single election, but I will take every single one of the 30 days that I have to certify the election, regardless of the quantities, because there's a lot more activities than just counting ballots. Part of the integrity of an election is to reconcile everything that happens at all of the polling locations, everything that happened here. There's some what is called a 1% manual tally that we have to conduct, where we have to pull 1% of the precinct batches and mail ballot batches and compare it against what the system saw. And we're manually tallying these respective, number one, we have to randomly select these batches or randomly select these precincts, and it has to cover all the respective contests. If it doesn't cover all the respective contests that are on the ballot, then we have to add more batches or more precincts. So we have covered all of the contests on the ballot. And then we have to conduct manual tally of these votes and then compare it against the election night count. And if they compare, great. If not, then we have to reconcile the reason why before I can certify the election. So there's many more activities. But one of the other reasons why I wait for all 30 days is to give situations like voters who have a signature miscompare or not signed their back of their envelope an opportunity to cure it before I have to certify the election. And lastly, it's for selfish purposes, because by the time I certify the election, if there's any close contests that are on the ballot, then I want to make sure I withstand any level of a recount.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Anyone else have a question? My goodness. I don't see any other questions. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vu, Director
Wait, I could
Vu.
do one more if you'd like.
Okay, all right, Mary.
No, the one more is there's a measure on the ballot talking about letting younger folks vote in the primary, right? And if they're going to be 18 by the general election. Would that, do you think that that would have have a big impact on your work at the Registrar of Voters?
Well, I think the impact is as noted on that measure about the fiscal impact associated with that to maintain the voter registration rolls, because you're now allowing 17-year-olds to register. Of course, that means that we have to, you know, if we had a pandemic, we'd be sending them a respective mail ballot for the upcoming election. So there's a fiscal cost. So certainly there's going to be a logistical portion of that as well. But when it comes down to it, whatever the voters decide is what we will implement. We don't necessarily get into the, as you can imagine, we stay very neutral in our positions on this, and including this item. So if the law passes and the voters choose to have it go into law, then we will implement it for those that are 17 years of age.
So if it does pass, you will do whatever is needed, and it doesn't sound like, it sounds like you're prepared for it.
We will have to happen. Yeah, we will have to be. Ultimately, right now is there's already pre-registration happening, and so we would just lower the bar from 18 to 17, if you will. But an individual would need to register to vote. It does kind of change the dynamic, though, because we have to make sure that, you know, what's happening in a primary election does not necessarily happen in a general election, and we got to make sure that we've got points of cutoff for individuals that can or cannot.
Gotcha. Sounds fun.
It is such a, you know, everyone knows us as having to be election experts, but know that our office is much more than experts in election law and the administration of elections. We've had to be experts in U.S. Postal Service mail. We've had to be experts in logistics. We've had to be experts in street address files. We've had to be experts now in COVID-19, and now we've had to be experts in cybersecurity as well. We haven't even talked about cybersecurity, but just know that we've done, and we're constantly monitoring everything that's happening from all of the different angles that could potentially make this election go sideways. And that includes things like wildfires. We've had to be experts in and be close with SDG&E to make sure that, hey, if they're planning on turning off any power, that it's not going to affect any one of our super polls locations and their ability to continue the voting process. So many more complexities about the elections that you probably is another time, another session, another meeting for me to describe.
Thank you, Mr. Vu. Oh, thank you, Mr. Vu. We really appreciate you coming. We appreciate your time. And it's been a wonderful presentation. We should know everything and be experts.
We're going to hire all of you as poll workers now, and you must sign up.
Right. So I think there was, okay, that question is answered, the poll workers. So thank you. And again, thank you to Lisa Pipkin-Allen. We appreciate all your help. And then Marilyn Hamilton, you have a wonderful assistant. Tell her thank you also. We really appreciate her.
I will absolutely let her know. And Elise, if you're out there, thank you for setting this up.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Michael. It's my pleasure.
She's heard this 2 times over already, most of it at least.
Yes, I have.
Right.
Except for the 430,000 mail ballots. If you haven't voted your mail ballot, get it back.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Bye
so
now.
much. We'll let you go now. Thanks.
All right. And let me just parting words. Lord, let the winner win big.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's some claps, reactions for you.
Right.
Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
You're giving feedback, Susan. Like I'm hearing sort of things. You might want to encourage everybody to shut off their microphones again.
I was looking to see that everyone had their microphones shut off a little bit earlier, and I think that I couldn't find where the noise was coming from. It was like someone was drinking through a straw. That was some of the noise, that I couldn't find it. So our next guest has entered our meeting, and I am going to turn this meeting now over to our endorsement chair, Yvonne Elkin. Yvonne, it's all yours.
Hey there. All right, so I see Ammar is here now, which I'm glad to see. So
Yeah,
and I'm not
sorry.
sure,
Sorry the day got away from us. My apologies.
but it kind of worked out well because Mr. Vu just got done. So your
He's
timing
great.
was perfect. So anyhow, just to introduce this segment a little bit, there have been, Ammar has done some interviews recently, and there's been some reporting through KPBS and some discussion all over the place about some of the comments that Ammar has been making recently. And as an endorsed candidate from the Democratic Women's Club, there were a few topics that are definitely of concern to women that we had some questions about. So I really don't want to lead the questioning. I just wanted to provide an opportunity for our membership to ask questions. So I think maybe let's start off with Ammar. If you could talk a little bit about your interview with the Defend East County. Please talk about some of the things that we've seen on your position on women's right to choose.
Yes,
there has been some differences there. There's also been some differences on some of the gun safety things and that sort of thing. So if you would maybe discuss that, and then we'll have some questions. Is that okay with everybody?
Yvonne, could we ask Ammar to open up his video, please?
I'm trying to work on the video. I'm just having some technical glitches. But I'm trying to work on it right now. Give me a second. Let me see if I could let me try to do it on my phone instead of my laptop because it's on the fritz. Let me see. Give me 1 second. Forgive me. You might have to just use my phone. There it is.
There you are. There you are. We see you.
Hi, everybody. Well, do you want me to just kick into it?
Just, if you talk a little bit, and then I do have some people here that have some questions for you, so we'll let them ask it.
Yeah,
as well.
please. Yeah. Okay. So I would encourage everybody to also read Charlie Clark's Tribune write-up on this. He's the only Black reporter left in all of San Diego. And he and I had a pretty in-depth conversation about this before even the interview and then also after the interview. And I think he frames it, frankly, a little bit more kind of just the facts than KPBS did. His feelings were that KPBS was going for like sensationalism a little bit. And then the AP did a story as well that I also think provides full context and clarifications and, re-articulations of my positions that provide more clarity. So I would encourage you to look up the AP and the Tribune. And now, having said that, I apologized for first going to the Defend East County group, not knowing, or at least being able to condemn the 4,000 members who have, of the 22,000 who have been violent, hateful, some of whom who've been expelled, some of whom are still there. And I wish if I could do it again, if I did want to do it again, I would have confronted Justin about that and also about his own past comments. So I wish I knew those things, and I want to apologize just from the onset, not doing my due diligence. The reason I went on that meeting, for those of you who are like, why did you even meet with him in the first place, was conspiracy theories about me, my identity, my family, my heritage were starting to crop up again. And that is kind of I'm human. It's a very sensitive topic for me because, as many of you know, my dad and I are not the closest, but what I will tell you is that after that election, during that election, he lost his job, he lost his pension, as a result of, all the information that came out. He works for another government, so they didn't like that his son was running for U.S. Congress and was condemning someone that they thought was not worthy of condemnation. my grandfather, but I still stand by that statement of condemning his actions or alleged actions or whatever, because I wasn't born. And my dad suffered a heart attack because of all the stress. So in the heat of all of that, and really just wanting to just, prevent the bleeding of this conspiracy theory going unanswered, that was why I went on there. And the Tribune explains that, because I talked to Charlie about it beforehand. My first interaction with DEC, frankly, was during the Valley Fire, when I had to evacuate my home in Hamul. And they were there helping folks alongside with me, Liz Lavartu. A lot of us candidates were doing that, and Defend East County folks were there too. So there are individuals in there who obviously are just there. They're not quite part of like all the negative aspect. And so I decided to go on there and understanding that East County is a very difficult district, a very conservative, very far right area. And, it doesn't disqualify me from me interacting with East County. So I figured they were just an amalgamation of all the things about East County, the good, the bad, the ugly. They were just a representation of East County, warts and all. And I said this in the NBC debate, and I actually will send this later. Marcella actually might have the link and she could put it in here. But I addressed this in the NBC 7 debate this Saturday. I don't know if many of you got to see it, but I basically said, look, I made a mistake not standing my ground. I made a mistake not fully vetting this group. One of my strengths and weaknesses is trying to understand more than I want to be understood. It's trying to make people feel heard. And sometimes I want people to feel heard because I feel like that's the way that you're able to bridge divides. And I think I went a step too far. And my explanations weren't terribly clear, or my positions weren't terribly clear. So I went on KBBS and they did a partial explanation. Charlie did a better one, and the AP did an even better explanation. So what you'll hear here is not just something I've said to you, but it's public record. And so, when it comes to Joe Biden, my statement, and you've heard me say this before, my statement was, I'm trying to earn everyone's vote in this district. I don't take it for granted. You shouldn't just vote for somebody because they fall on your party line. They have to actually earn it. And that's what I've tried to do for 4 years, talking to everyone, being accessible, and trying to win voters across the aisle and my own base, independents, and everybody. Because that's what you have to do to be an effective congressman, I think, is be everybody's representative and be accessible to everybody and earn everybody's vote the good old-fashioned way of meeting with them and talking to them like we are today. And that's what I tried to say. And what I articulated was not exactly it didn't come off as how I meant it, which is like my vote was open, meaning I don't just vote party line. I want to vote the person, not the party. And I expect you all to do the same, right? I've since obviously voted for Biden. I've publicized it. It's out there in the news. It's been tweeted. It's public. I voted for Biden. Biden endorsed me, and I've actually voted for Biden. He is far better than Trump. That is not without a question. And that's without question. My statement was simply trying to highlight that we should not just vote for people based on their party affiliation. And I was trying to get this Republican group to understand that. Vote the person, not the party. Don't just vote for Isa because he's a Republican. Vote for somebody who has something to offer this community. That was the point I was trying to make. It was very inarticulate, but obviously I clarified in subsequent interviews, and also clearly casted my vote for the vice president. I hope he wins. And when it came to Amy Coney Barrett, the phrasing of my answer and the question was a little bit confusing to me, to be honest, but I answered it in full afterwards, and it's public record. And that is that, if she was qualified in a Republican controlled Senate, she will likely get confirmed, right? Because it's a Republican controlled Senate. That's what I meant by she's going to get approved. And then I explained, they're like, well, what would you do if you were in the Senate and you were a Democrat? I said, well, I would ask her a very simple question. Just one question is all it would take. Would you repeal the ACA and take away healthcare for tens of millions of people and pre-existing conditions? And my answer, if she said she would, that would be disqualifying to me. And so that goes into the next question of where do I stand on the issue of life and choice? And I think I've said this to your group. I've said this to the progressive groups about my personal views. I believe that, we have to give women the freedom to make their own decisions. If we're not all free, none of us are free. And regardless of my personal views, like my personal faith, my faith does not bleed into what I would legislate, what is right for the public common good. And so what I've always said is if you're actually pro-life, banning abortions would not get the job done. Like, let's just start from the proposition of my conservative district. If you actually are pro-life, what you actually need is to support Planned Parenthood, to allow it to live up to its name of Planned Parenthood, to reduce unexpected pregnancies, to provide birth control and contraception, to give women all the range of options for themselves to choose, whether it's contraception and birth control and family planning and clinic access to clinics and adoption services as options for those who want to just have their child for adoption. There are many families out there, whether they're LGBTQ or just unable to have children in heterosexual couples who would love to adopt a child. If you really want to help women with, choosing motherhood, a lot of statistics show that many women who don't want to have a child now, it's because of economic reasons. So equal pay, parental leave, childcare, all those things would help, help a woman choose motherhood if they please to. And then I said, in the end, it's ultimately a woman's choice. It's her decision. And I think I've said that consistently throughout, and it's made some people, and this, I remember Cody Pedersen, when I said this 2 years ago, Cody was like, Cody and me had some slight disagreements, but we ultimately arrived at the same conclusion, which is supporting Planned Parenthood and all the services it provides and giving a woman a right to choose what's best for her between her doctor, herself, and if she's a person of faith, her God. And honestly, between me and Isa, it's the women in this district, in this country, know better what to do with this issue than me and Isa. So it shouldn't be up to men deciding. And what I tell Christians, and this works, is that I believe life is a God-given gift, but equally, I believe that free will is a God-given gift, and no man-made law can take away God's given free will. And we cannot have laws in this country that take away the free will of a woman to make her own choices with her own body. So that's where I stand on this. I know it's not just the party line message, but it's the party line policy conclusion. And I think that's what really matters. And I've been able to get a lot of conservatives to take on this idea of, you're right. And I tell them, look, banning doesn't prevent. If you were to ban abortions, legal abortions, you would just increase illegal abortions. Planned Parenthood was defunded in Texas, and teenage abortions went through the roof, illegal ones that are harmful to the woman and to the child, right? So if you are pro-life or pro-choice, you have to take pro-choice policies. It's not, I don't believe in pro-choice versus pro-life. It's really pro-choice versus anti-choice. And so that's kind of my policy on that. And I was inarticulate about it, but that's really my position on that. Those are the two questions that were prompted. I'm happy to go into the rest of it and take questions.
Okay, all right. So Jen French has a question. So Jen, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Thank you so much. I appreciate, the opportunity. Obviously, now you're speaking to a group of Democratic women, and you have different answers than you gave in your unmasked interview with the racist group. But I want to know what you have to say to the young women who work for Planned Parenthood, the Black and brown women who have been going door to door in your racist district, knocking on doors, putting their lives on the line, having people send dogs out to threaten them when they're knocking on doors. And then you come out and make these statements publicly. And there's no excuse for it. You either support Planned Parenthood or you don't. And I don't know how you live with your endorsement from Planned Parenthood when you're so cavalier with our rights and our lives.
Right. Yeah, no, I understand the question, and I understand the concern behind it. I've never said that I don't support Planned Parenthood. That's never left my mouth. I've never made that statement. And again, my position is my position. And it's like, if me and you were to MapQuest going to a destination, we start at different places, but we end up at the same goal. And I think that's what matters the most, is where we end, where we land, which is getting this district to vote for somebody who supports Planned Parenthood has never happened in 40 years. It just never happened in the history of this district. And so my message of trying to get these people to understand the nuance that regardless of you're pro-life or pro-choice, regardless of where you start off, supporting Planned Parenthood, supporting birth control, empowering women to make their own best choices, that is the only way you're going to achieve either the pro-life or pro-choice agenda. Because if you were to actually ban abortions like the pro-life people want to, you're going to have more abortions. You're going to have more women in pain. You're going to have more suffering. And if you're actually pro-life, then what about the life of the mother? What about the life of, a child who is born and into a world where they're not loved or taken care of? So that's been the argument that I've made. I've made it very successfully, even today, texting and calling thousands of voters. And the net result's going to be this district will vote for somebody who has said that they support Planned Parenthood, and here is why. It might not be at the same starting block as others, but it's that the finish line is ultimately the same. And this is a very conservative district that Hillary lost by 15 points. This is the district that we live in. And to those women who are out there being courageous, those young women, those women of color who are out there canvassing for us, I applaud their effort. I know it's so tough. I mean, I'm a man of color and it's hard for me. I can't imagine being a woman, much less a woman of color. And I know it's challenging. And I know it's heartbreaking the way that we have to message and really get our message across and be understood. I think in this district, what I've learned is I have to really focus on trying to be understood or understand more than I want to be understood, because it's a district that is not willing to even open the door to us. And it's like, if someone came to your door and said, hey, do you want a vacuum? You'll say no. But if they actually know how to pitch properly, they will say, hey, do you want to cure cancer? And they'll say, okay, sure. And then you walk in and they clean the spot on this carpet you've had for 10 years. And you're like, well, I didn't really think I needed that today, but you've really swayed me because you got your foot in the door. And sometimes you have to do that in these districts, or you risk losing to Darrell Issa, who has said he's voted for Planned Parenthood, but has always voted against it, has taken every position on this. And his voting record has been staunchly against Planned Parenthood. And I was very frank with Yasmin from Planned Parenthood. I don't know if you know Yasmin and the National Planned Parenthood. I told her exactly word for word what my policy was. And I said, I don't want you to be surprised when I tell you that I am personally, as a person of faith, here are my views, but here are my policy positions that are not in contradiction with my views. They actually achieve my views. But independent of that, I believe a separation of church and state. It's not only constitutional, it's in my faith. My faith says you render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And that means issues of state should not be tampered with by issues of faith. And I've talked to, members of the Black community, older Black women who come from the church and also wrestle with this issue, right? Black women, older Black women wrestle with this issue. I've talked to Ellen Nash and many others who say, I get it. I understand where you're coming from, because it's an issue we wrestle with. And the way that they've found, a way to be intellectually and morally honest with themselves is the same road that I've taken of, you could have your personal values, but you have to check them out in order to be a public servant. And so, again, I apologize for how inarticulate it was, but my values are still my values. And that's why Planned Parenthood has still endorsed me. I called Yasmin to tell her, like, look, I said what I've told you before, but it was inarticulate, it was brash, and the context of it all maybe turned off some people. But the good news is, this is if we care about winning, also, if that's part of our consideration, the polling has me and Issa as of October 13th, which is when all the interview happened a week before, a couple of days before that. So we were polling while this was happening. And thank goodness, Democrats are still behind me. Independents were beating Issa by 25 points. We've actually won over some Republicans. And the race is tied 48% with 4% undecided. And we are so close to winning this race. Anything can tilt the scales, including the support of this club. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
okay. So and I have a few more people and I don't want to take all night. So let me reach out to, I think, Rob Howard, you had something you wanted to say?
So,
Are you there, Rob?
no, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, okay. All right, Ruth?
Yes. As I recall, I'm the person that made the motion to endorse Ammar. I stand behind that motion now. There's no, yes, he's done some pretty stupid things, but there's an election coming up in a very short time. And for us to do anything now that would give the opponents any reason to have even more negative campaign ads against Ammar, I think would be just ludicrous. Our goal is to elect the Democrat. He may not be perfect, but he's better than Isa. And when you find a perfect candidate, let me know, and I'll see if he survived the cross. But in any case, you know, I stand behind that motion. I hope the whole club stands behind that vote. And I realize, you know, he's done what he's done and he's explaining what he did. And let's get as many people to vote for him as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. We've come a long way, Ruth. We've come a long way. So, and all of you remember the history. She did not have my back in the beginning. So this is very telling coming from her. It has a lot of weight, I think. And look, I'm not out here pretending like I, you know, haven't upset people. But my commitment is to win this race for us and to make sure we have a representative who is light years ahead of Darrell Issa. And I think it is abundantly clear that the alternative, the contrast, couldn't be clearer on a whole host of issues. This is a man who has been there for 18 years. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. And I have more years ahead of me serving, hopefully, than behind me. And Issa is just really in it for himself. And so I know I've disappointed a lot of people. I've pissed off people on both sides. But people are saying, you know, I'm willing to reach out to people and work across the aisle. And the net result is that you'll have somebody who will deliver for this district and make you proud and follow through on my commitments. And I ask you to just look at my record in 2 years. If you don't like it, you can vote me out. But I'm confident that you and the district will see my record and say, we bet on the right person. And we're thankful that Issa is not congressman.
All right, and so Rebecca, you had a question, Rebecca? I don't hear you. I can't hear you.
That's better. Yeah, Ammar, a while back, you made a couple statements on Facebook around COVID and advocating for businesses to reopen while cases in San Diego County were quite high, and repeating some, I would say, non-evidence-based comments about rationale behind that. And then, of course, in that video, we saw you sitting quite closely, unmasked with somebody indoors. And I have to admit, I have a pretty big concern. We've seen what happens when national level leadership doesn't take science seriously. And I really worry about throwing our weight behind somebody who thinks that is either willing to go along with people who claim that COVID is a hoax or just thinks that it's expedient to say that. So I wonder if you can justify, and I did actually reach out to your campaign when you made that comment on Facebook and nobody answered me. So I wonder if you can speak to what your decision-making process was when you decided to go into a small enclosed space to do an interview with an anti-Semitic racist. And I was eating and drinking is not a legitimate answer, so skip that one.
Well, I understand the emotion behind your question. Let me try to get to the substance of it and also address that. I know that you're very upset and I understand it. And I don't think that it's ill-founded. I think that no one here thinks I'm anti-Semitic for a whole host of reasons. So I don't know if I'm going to give too much time to that one. But I have consistently said that I supported safe reopening. I've said that my opponent, Darrell Issa, sent out a letter to raise money off of me. And he said he believed that the pandemic was a moronic doomsday scenario, a left-wing conspiracy manufactured by the left to draw people into a frenzy. I've never said any of those things. What I've said is that I believe that we need to reopen safely with the science on hand. And what the science and data has shown us is that some of us have moralized the issue of reopening in a way that isn't consistent with science. For example, when the beaches opened up, the best science told us that outdoor activity was safer than indoor activity because of ventilation. Because if you are dining indoors, there's an accumulated risk because people are breathing at each other's air. That's why the best science said if we're going to have businesses open, it should be outdoors. And that's why the city council and the city government and the county government allowed to waive permits so businesses could be outdoors in the parking lots or in their patios. And they waived the permits to be able to expand outdoors. I thought that was a good thing because I've talked to countless business owners, Rebecca, who have, 1 in 5 small businesses have completely disappeared from the face of the earth under this pandemic and this president's failure to address this earlier. And I've been very critical of that. If you saw the NBC7 debate that I had on Saturday, I was very critical of the fact that the president didn't use the pandemic preparedness playbook that the administration I worked for left behind after Ebola. Secondarily, I said that leaders like Issa and Trump calling this a hoax from the onset, 200,000 lives later, including my uncle Ruben, who died of COVID-19 3 months ago, that would beg to differ that this is a hoax. I have no justification for, being in close quarters, smoking and drinking with someone who I don't know if they were, if they had COVID or not. Apparently he didn't appear to, but that's not scientific. So I do apologize for that, Rebecca. And there's no excuse for that. And I'm not going to even justify that. That was a mistake and a lapse. I think all of us have had a hard time with, following the rules exactly after 7 months. But I don't make any excuses for that. And I do apologize for that. But I've never said, hey, open up willy-nilly and let's go crazy with it. I've said, let's follow the data, the science. Let's not moralize this issue. And I have criticized the president for the things that he could have done better. I've criticized the governor for his inconsistencies. I've talked to businesses who've said, I literally bought the produce, got back my workers. I spent the capital, the time, and the energy to open up as the governor said we were going to be able to. And a week later, we were told to shut down again. And those inconsistencies led to businesses losing more money and then having to lay off staff and went under. And 1 in 5 businesses have gone under. Many in our district have gone under because they said it would have been cheaper if you told us to stay closed and keep doing takeout and delivery, but you told us it was ready to reopen. And then the plans change. Part of that's because, you can't really predict this pandemic. You can't really predict, what the cases are going to look like. And if we're in that safe zone to reopen, week by week, things change. But really, small businesses have been on the receiving end of that. And the suicide hotline has gone up 1,000% since this time last year. Domestic abuse.
I have to, I need a citation for that because that's a pretty common talking point. Yes, please.
I'll send it.
That
I'll
one
send
is
it to
not
you.
accurate.
I'll send it to you. Domestic abuse has gone up. I think a big problem that we've had, this pandemic has highlighted a lot of problems. 1, the need to understand that mental health is as important as physical health. 2, the fact that we don't have the right safety net for working people. 3, that we have an economy that rewards wealth more than work. And we've seen that with the way that the relief has gone to the well-off and well-connected at the expense of small businesses, including my opponent. And so I've heard reports of this. I know people personally who their children are having a hard time because they can't go back to school. I know kids who have autism and ADHD who cannot study virtually, and it's taking a hit on their families, and it's straining their families. So I know it anecdotally, there is data for it. I will provide it. In no way does it eclipse the public health problem, but these are 2 dueling realities that are existing in our country. There is a mental health problem that's been caused by this pandemic. All of us can attest that we've been stressed and strained by this. It's not been a walk in the park, but there also is a public health crisis, which my family has experienced personally. So like I said, I apologize for my own actions. And, I'm not professing to be perfect, but I just wanted to set the record straight on the clear contrast. My opponent has called this a hoax, a moronic doomsday scenario, a far cry from what I've said. And I just wanted to clarify my positions on that. And I'll look for those data points and send them to you, Rebecca. I found it on the Washington Post a couple months ago, but I'll send it to you. And I'm glad that I belong to a party that's not impervious to facts and evidence, because the other side is. But there are facts for the things that I've stated, and I will share them, and I hope that you'll be receptive to them.
Okay, so I don't have anybody else who has a question, but I have one more myself. So in one of your Facebook posts, okay, you said, I am not supportive of defunding police.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I kind of understand the language and the framing,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I would have liked to have heard, then how do you support criminal justice reform, making sure that no more Black and brown unarmed innocent men are shot by the police for no reason?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, the problem we have with today with social media and the news is if it bleeds, it leads. Nobody even, has anybody here seen my 10-point plan to redesign the police?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I've posted it multiple times. Like I've posted, I did it, I don't know, when was this? July, probably. So before I went on this stuff, before I talked about any of this stuff months ago, and I've consistently talked about it over and over. I have a 10-point plan to redesign the police to make sure that they could actually live up to their name of protecting and serving. And there's bipartisan support for this. I've actually talked to the Police Officers Association on this stuff, and they agree with it. And these things are not milk toast. First, it's a proposal to end the 1033 program, which was to militarize the police, to arm them for war, which was developed in the 90s under Bill Clinton to have the war against drugs, right? With the cartels and all that stuff. That allowed police officers to be outfitted for war, not SWAT teams, not specialized units, but anybody who's a police officer, they are outfitted for war now. They have, military equipment, they have a whole bunch of stuff. So what I said is I would work with people like Senator Rand Paul, who actually proposed this reform. And that would mean demilitarizing the police, allowing the Defense Department to still allow people to get gloves and goggles and boots, things that are very innocuous, but not armored vehicles and sound cannons and rifles that are meant for military combat. And so how do we stop violence? Maybe we stop outfitting our military for our police like military. Yeah, really, Rand Paul, that's how you get things done. You got to work across the aisle. We can't just do it in silos. We don't have a democratic government right now. We have a Democratic and Republican government. That's how you if we want to get things done, we have to work with the other side to do them. And this is something that I could find an ally on the other side that we could get that done, demilitarizing the police. Number two, have a national standard for training and de-escalation and disengagement. That's number two. Third, having a national registry for misconduct. So if you commit something here as a police officer and you get fired, you can't just go to Arizona and get a job. You got to make sure to get right with the law, serve your time, serve your punishment, be reprimanded properly, et cetera, et cetera. So that's number three. Number four is hold police officers accountable, right? Number five, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Number five, have a national registry of for standards of misconduct, not just misconduct registry knowing where people are, but having a standard. And then there's also to fund alternatives, right? I don't think that, police officers have told me, like, I didn't get in this line of work to deal with mental health disturbances, to deal with homelessness issues or substance abuse issues. I'm not trained for that. You're over leveraging me. You're overexerting me. So I would support, providing funding so that we could have, social workers and mental health professionals accompany police officers and let them be the ones writing this thing, right? They're the ones who are in the front seat, so to speak, so that they're the ones who are de-escalating this issue or addressing the mental health problem or whatever concern. But you ask a social worker, they won't take a 911 call by themselves. They want to be accompanied by somebody in case it gets dangerous. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. So I do support making sure that we have alternatives to police to address those kinds of concerns with the proper attaché so they remain safe. And that, I think, would curb a lot of punishment, a lot of bad things. And all these policies have come from like the campaign, the 8 campaign, a very, very, very good nonprofit that has addressed these things. Making sure that police officers can't shoot at moving vehicles would reduce a lot of fatalities. So there's a whole host of reforms on the federal level. But I think the term defund the police is very, very off-putting to people who actually support these policies, that we could actually get it done. And also, I want to train our police officers better. And I can't think of another type of work where we say we're going to train you better but pay you less. If we're all on board with training people better, then we can't possibly say we're going to defund you in the process. But I do support diverting resources to these other programs I just mentioned. That I'm okay with. But this notion that we're going to abolish the police or defund them somehow, but ask them to do more with less is problematic. But can we make sure that the funding is going to positive programs that leads to community policing and diversity in policing and better training and more accountability? Absolutely. So if you look at my 10-point plan, I'm sure you'll find a lot of things that you align with. And I don't support slogans, I support the substance. And I think we actually agree on the substance a lot more than just being hung up on the slogan that's become very popular, but also very divisive. And I want to make sure we get policy done, not just get hung up on slogans.
Okay, well, thank you. And then Ellen?
Oh, hi. I wanted to, we've gone on so long, I'm kind of tired. But anyway, I wanted to say, that Ammar had reached out to me. Actually, I saw the post on Facebook about the visit to this group. And I have to admit, the first thing that I thought about was, if you're, I don't live in Santee, but I have a lot of friends that live in that area. I do a lot of my shopping in that area. And my sons have friends there. And since the protests, particularly in La Mesa, wandering around in that district is very uncomfortable. Folks look at you crazy. My son is like, they're never wanting to go there, actually. He has a lot of friends. So Ammar has a lot of work to do. We all have a lot of work to do. So I saw I just see Ammar as a young man. And we need to give him the support that we've always given him. We gave it to him in 2018. He's mature, he's grown up a lot. But we need to reimagine, and I believe that's what he's going to try to do, as John Lewis said before he passed away. We need to reimagine an entire system. We got to change the entire system. And we need young people and young men like Ammar to do that, who's coming from lived experiences that a lot of us have never gone through and never want to go through. And I think he brings a lot with him. And the whole concept of a peacemaker. We need peace. We're living in a divisive city right now. I went to La Mesa to the credit union the other day. I was standing there with my black Census Black Counts shirt on, with my little shorts on. And this gentleman in front of me, white guy, big, looked at me like I was crazy. I've never saw a man look at me like he did. I was so uncomfortable. He kept staring at me. I've never experienced that. I'm a lifelong resident of San Diego. I've never experienced some of the things. And yet my sons particularly are feeling very unsafe. So in that area that you're representing, I'm glad I don't live there. I have friends that live there. I worry about them. And dude, you gotta do some things that some of us are not gonna like. in order for you to make change. Just like Martin Luther King did, he was chastised, thrown under the bus. John Lewis, Nelson Mandela, we can go down the line if we want to in history. People who are in positions that are trying to create peace and reimagine a design of a system, sometimes we're not going to agree with you. We're going to probably disagree with you more than agree with you, because you're going to look very different than individuals that are running in other certain districts. It's just that way. It's just the bottom line. So I just wanted to make those comments about we have to support you. We're not going to agree on everything, but we have to support you. And I think that you're going to do a great job. We're going to hold you accountable.
You better.
Hold you accountable. We're going to call you out when you're doing things wrong.
You've been doing it already, and I'm going to listen
Already.
like I am.
Yeah, right. And if we have to go to the voting box, we can do that too. And you know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a permanent thing. So we're going to hold you accountable. So Democratic Women's Club, let's get behind this young man. Let's support him. And let me say this one other thing, please. Democratic Women's Club, let's keep our business internally, especially at the end of an election, and we all over Facebook beating a Democrat up. That doesn't make sense. Keep that internally. We have a chance to win in that particular district, and we can't go about tearing each other down right now. We got to support these candidates, and we got to deal with them internally. That's what I have to say.
I agree, Nicole. And just so you all know, I want to just clarify a couple things. This is not a visor, it's a baseball cap, and I don't think that's a crime, first of all. So I'm sorry if it's offensive, but it's a baseball cap. It's not a visor for golf. I don't even know how to play golf. Number two, Nicole, thank you for donating. I was not expecting that out of this. Appreciate it. Ellen, I appreciate your words. I remember when we spoke, you made an observation, and I haven't surveyed everybody, but you did make a very keen observation that she's like, notice not a lot of Black people, if any, were attacking you. It was mainly allies. So I find that observation that you made particularly interesting. And third, I hear you. And here's the thing, guys, ladies and everybody. Your job is literally to make me uncomfortable. That is your job. If I'm running for Congress and I'm your congressman, my job is to make sure that you feel assured by the kind of congressman I am. I'm beholden to you. You are my constituents and I am your representative. It's not the other way around. My opponent wants everyone to make him comfortable, just call him congressman even though he's not congressman. I come to these forums not because it's going to be all hunky-dory, we're going to get along. I'm coming on this forum at 8:40 at night when I still have to talk to more voters before I go to bed, Republicans and independents and Democrats with 15 days to go. Not many of you live in this district even, but you are my constituents, because even though you can't vote for me, I'll be voting for you in Congress about everything we've covered tonight. And so I will continue to show up. I won't write anybody off. I won't think I'm too big or too important for anybody. And no matter how much pressure I'm under or time I'm committed to, I will always make time for those who believed in me. And I would not be here today if it weren't for people in this group who lifted me up despite the odds and have donated to me, who volunteered their labor and love, who've given me their days and nights. And I really appreciate that. And I want to just say thank you to all of you for believing in me. And if I win this race, it will be in no small part because of the work that you've put into me for 4 years. Outside of individuals like you, Ammar Campa-Najjar is a very unpronounceable name on a ballot that means nothing to most people. But because of you, it became a name that had 48.3% of the voters in this district vote for, against a 40-year legacy family like the Hunters. And because of you, we're going to defeat an 18-year career politician who, doesn't believe that voters should pick their politicians. He's a politician that thinks politicians should pick their voters and move around districts until they find one that suits them. So I want to say thank you to all of you. And I'm sorry for the hurt feelings. And I understand where I fell short. And I hope I, made myself understood on, where I stand on issues. And I explained why I approached this group to be a peacemaker, like like Ellen said, you know, last year I met with Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak, with his own hands, assassinated both my grandparents. My grandfather, who maybe had it coming if he was a terrorist, whatever. I don't know if he was or wasn't. That's just a matter of history. But my grandmother was a homemaker. She was just a woman who was raising 7 kids. And she also was killed. And I met with him, shook his hand, and said, let's make peace. And he said to me, one day, you and my grandchildren will sit down at the table of peace, and you won't be able to even explain to yourself why it took this long. And he said, you know, a millimeter beneath our skin, we're all the same. And I really do believe that. That's the only reason I was able to shake his hand and move towards peace. It's the only way that I was able to go meet with people across the aisle. And it's the only reason that I still have the ability, after 4 years of being called everything under the sun, a terrorist, and then now maybe a white supremacist sympathizer, which are like on opposite ends of the spectrum. I've been called everything. And my fight and my commitment has never changed. I've never quit on my community. I'm a fighter and ISIS a quitter. And that same fighting spirit is what's going to be sent to Washington to fight for the things that we believe in. And like Ellen said, my record will speak for itself. All I'm asking this group is to give me 2 years of a record that will make you decide whether I was worth the investment or not. And I promise you that same fighting spirit will be there in Congress to make sure that we finally have someone in this district who looks out for all of us, not just the fringe elements of the county. So that's kind of what I have to say on that.
Okay, all right. Elise has her hand up. We're gonna let her speak, and then if you'll maybe just respond in a short answer.
I'm already filibustering.
It's because it is getting late, and I think we have a couple more things we want to do as a club tonight. So, Elise.
Yeah, Ammar, I'm really worried. Not only did you meet with the group that is anti-Semitic, you met with a group that has no respect at all for Black people, and particularly Black women. And for you to say that you're articulate and that you made a mistake, you're running for Congress. You're not running for something on the water district in some place in the county. And Congress is important. You did something that just upset me a little bit with Becca. You told Becca, oh, you're emotional and you're upset. She was not emotional and she was not upset. And men who think that about women, as far as I'm concerned, do not respect women a whole hell of a lot. So I just want you to know that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I apologize.
Yeah, see, there's too many little mistakes happening. And unfortunately, you're not on my ballot, but these are little mistakes. These are not the mistakes that men who are going to be representing us correctly in Congress make. And I'm also a Black woman, and I'm an older Black woman, and I don't wrestle with the problem of women should have total control of their body. I joined the National Organization of Women 50 years ago, and I don't wrestle with that issue at all because it's a personal issue with women and their mates. So I don't want you to think all Black women are like that. But so, I hope you win because the other choice is so horrible. But I just had to say that.
No, I appreciate that. And I'll make it short. You're one of my favorite people. I mean, every time I see you, I give you a big old hug, and I haven't been able to do that. And,
that's why I'm so surprised.
I know. And I trust me, there are many nights that I don't sleep at night, or all of them now. And I think about people and stories and faces and words they've said, and yours will definitely be ones that will be visiting me at night. And I promise to heed them. I think, again, one of my blind spots is, and I'm sorry that I got triggered. I'm human, and I didn't mean to speak out of turn or belittle the emotions. For me, like being called anti-Semitic, I've been called that for 4 years. And I hope we're in a space where I could be also vulnerable, but it's a very, very triggering thing for me because of what's haunted me for 4 years and my whole life of not being Latino enough or Arab enough or American enough. you know, my
It's
girlfriend's
been
Jewish.
haunting me for 400 years.
And
Okay.
yeah, I know it. I know it. It pales in comparison to what you've experienced. I'm just simply explaining kind of my own very small scale, like, trauma from it. And I've talked about this. I even talked about it in the DEC thing. I said that, you know, people think racism is, or slavery does not still exist, but, you know, the descendants of slaves still live today, and we still have the institution of racism, and the police department and you know, the law enforcement, when it first was founded, it was meant to protect white property that also included Black people, and those vestiges have never left. And you know, I learned that listening to people from the community, because I didn't know that, and I've done a lot of listening, and I clearly need to do a lot more listening to you know, to those people who could be my grandparents and my parents. And I want you to know that I hear you, and it breaks my heart, honestly. This is the note we're ending the conversation on, but it breaks my heart to have disappointed you, and it will be something that will be in my head probably for the rest of my career, however long or short it is after November 3rd. So I hope I make you proud, and I hope that you could say, you know, Ammar has, you know, he's man enough to admit that he's improved, because we all have to, and it's reflected in his record as congressman. And hopefully in 2 years, you'll say all that labor, all the pain that he's put us through these last couple of weeks before Election Day, you know, he's shown us that he's worthy as a congressman. And I hope I could live to say that.
Okay, all right, let me, I promised this was our last question, but Becca has been brought up, and I think she wants to speak quickly. Again, you know, let's try to wind this down now a little bit.
Yeah, you know, Elise, I really want to thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And I think we see pretty often that when women speak anything above a whisper or a compliment, all of a sudden we're emotional. And I also felt pretty frustrated when you said that. And I think we have watched you express you're so sorry that people felt that way. You're so sorry that people were hurt. But at no point have I seen any real reflection on what you did. Obviously, we hope you get elected over Isa, but that does not mean our job is not to make you uncomfortable. Our job is to hold you to democratic principles and to principles of equity. And I need to point out that when you talk about being triggered and experiencing trauma because I said you were anti-Semitic, I did not say you were anti-Semitic. I said you met with an anti-Semitic group that scares the living shit out of me as a Jewish woman named Rebecca with a daughter named Esther watching this group grow in East County with weapons. You legitimized that. That is a thing that you did. You did not accidentally hurt my feelings by using the wrong tone or not wearing a mask. You legitimized an anti-Semitic group, and your actions reinforced a structure that will cause people harm. It has nothing to do with a label you might or might not have. So I'm sorry if you feel that women having strong opinions in your direction is emotional. To me, that's a pretty good sign that it's time to start thinking about who's going to primary you after I do hope you win. But I need you to keep in mind what systems you are reinforcing with your words and your perspectives, and you need to do some introspection.
I hear you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you, Ammar. And I, you know, I mean, for me as the endorsement chair, I just wanted to make sure that our membership had a chance to talk to you. I think it's important that you know how we feel and think about all of those kinds of actions. I totally agree with Becca that if you want to be a leader, you need to act like a leader and display model behavior that we all would respect. And I don't think you did that this time. You know, maybe tonight you were doing better, but you know, for the last few days, that has not appeared to be something that I.
And I clearly have more work to do, and Becca made that abundantly clear, and it hasn't fallen on deaf ears. So thank you. And I'm probably going to have to get better my whole life, but I hear you, Becca. And I do know that you didn't say that. So I'm sorry for that. I heard with my emotions and I didn't hear you for what you said. And I hear you and I understand and I agree. So.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for being open to the questions and the concerns that the Democratic Women's Club of San Diego have. And you know, I'm pleased to hear that you absolutely, and I expect you to be on the front line protecting women's right to choose.
That's right.
Not kind of in the back saying, okay, I'll vote for it, but I want you out there leading the charge.
I'll always protect a woman's freedom.
All right. All right. Anybody have anything else? If not, thank you so much. And we'll be watching how you do for the rest of the election. And you know, for me personally, I agree. I don't want Isa to get this seat. And so, I mean, although I can't vote for you, I could continue to support you.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's thank you very much, Ammar. Let's ask you to leave, and we will ask you to leave. And if the members wish to have a discussion, we can. And we're going to cut the live stream at this point. We're not going to